Bada bing. Bada bing, bada boom. So, this video is hopefully the beginning of a sort of series of me reading The Mind is Flat by Nick Chatter. The second title, or the extended title, The Illusion of Mental Depth and the Improvised Mind. My plan is to read the entire book page by page kind of thing. I actually haven't finished the book, and that's why I'm going to say, so far, the mind is fucking shit, or at least something of those lines for the title is going to be. Probably not those words, but so far the book hasn't done a very good job of displaying it. And I say it's majoritively somewhat annoying because I would say Nick Chatter somewhat has a good topic to be talking about, and he might be looking at some of the right places, but I think is doing doing a poor job at describing the scenarios in a truthful way, in the right way, and poorly associating certain conclusions and certain accusations of how this entire thing is gone. Accusations being something he said about Freud, Carl Jung, and Noam Chomsky. I'm saying this now, but those are some of the weakest memories of what the book actually has to say. So we'll get to that point, and then we'll see. The first 31 pages of this book, from the introduction to, I think, the majority of chapter 1, at least for the artificial section of it, is available online. I would, of course, always advise you to go read it, so that you can do it yourself. Of course, I'll be reading it here. However, the prologue, I'm probably not going to read completely. I have written down a script here, and I will probably do this. There's a good chance I'll do it for everyone. But today is more or less just a test on how I will be displaying. This is the second time shooting this. I've already made a 20-minute video on this, and water spills on me from a glass, and I got fed up. So we're trying to let's get to it. So the prologue. The title of the prologue is Literary Depth, Mental Shallows. The prologue starts with a quotation from an author or from some guy. When we claim, should I read this quote? The prologue starts with a quote from Daniel Bennett. When we claim to be just using our power of inner observation, we are always actually engaging in a sort of impromptu theorizing, and we're remarkably gullible theorizers, precisely because there is so little to observe and so much to pontificate about a fear of contradiction. This quotation itself kind of seems a bit odd. There is so much to it, precisely because there's so little to observe and so much to pontificate about. From what I understand, pontificate is to cut this fucking part out. We'll start from the beginning. So we're not going to read the quotes. Nick Chatter, when he starts to speak on his own behalf, brings up the story of Anna, who throws herself under a train from the book called Anna Krella by Tolstoy. Nick, throughout the book, will use the story from Tolstoy, a couple other stories, as repeating examples. If you're using fiction, or the way fiction is written, as one of your sources of how the mind functions, not a great start. He points out that since the case of Anna is fiction, the cause or properties of the suicide or any other aspect of the story is not stated by, if not stated by the author, are impossible to know or to be deduced in any level of trustworthy truth. So, if Tolstoy doesn't say it, then there's nothing behind it. If he doesn't describe how certain people look, if he doesn't say emotions and stuff, there isn't something you can really trustworthy or you should be bothering to deduce from that. Of course, he can imply, and that is an aspect of writing, But the majority of the time, if you were trying to play a game of truth and like competing, there's nothing to really deduce there. If Tolstoy says that Anna has dark hair, this is a quotation from the book. If Tolstoy says that Anna has dark hair, then Anna has dark hair. But if Tolstoy doesn't tell us why Anna jumped to her death, then Anna's motives are surely a void. End quotation. Nick states then that the story and case of Anna was, if the story and case of Anna was a journalistic, or a matter of history, i.e. real, our method of inquiry remains the same. In my opinion, he correctly points out that still most attempts to hypothesize, in my opinion, he correctly states that we must still hypothesize. We don't necessarily come to the truth, especially in the case of suicide, because the only thing you're trying to answer is why did they commit it? Why did they commit their own suicide? And there's nothing you can really do to like understand why they did so. You can understand some of whys and small motives, but the last ticking thought in their head is very hard to come to. So most of the time you hypothesize. But no matter what we think of, our ideas are still very unreliable, quote unquote unreliable, as he says. He compares that lawyers and journalists who would be acting in this real case would fulfill the same role and face many alike challenges as critics or scholars of literature would when attempting to find deeper truths to the unstated. However, authors can vary for points or facts into books, but even then, if an author does not give confirmation, then it is unusable as truth or lore. At last, Nick arrives at what I think as the beginning of the end. If Anna was to survive the collision, and we're still imagining this in the real case, was to survive the collision with the train, and then was to be asked why did she do it? Months later, after recovering, she would be, quote unquote, be as unsure as anyone else about her true motives. But Nick doesn't try to justify this. He doesn't say anything. Outside of saying any advantage may be more than outweighed by the distorted lens of self-perception. And our interpretations of our own actions seem, among other things, to assign ourselves a greater wisdom and ability than might be evident to dispassionate observers. So, what he's saying is, self-perception of what you do can distort what you have committed, especially in the past. Sure, but it still leaves you, there's still something you can still get over that. And when it talks about dispassionate observers, that doesn't do anything to actually talk about what is at hand, is why she committed her action. But nothing more. This will be a recurring theme in the book, where Nick will explain, I did this as, I'm quoting myself, Nick will explain with lingering creative detail a case such as AI research starting in the 50s, or a hypothetical case such as these with Anna, written it with words like failure, hoax, or any other statement that is a form of degradative flogging. Then he rests his whole argument on lines of, and half a century later, we're still at square one, and the very idea that our mind contains a hidden depth is utterly wrong, end quote. And begin quote, yet the contents of our hidden depths seem to remain perfectly elusive, end quote, without ever stating why this should be taken the way he wants us to take it. That is, that the mind is flat. He wants us to come to a conclusion. And he always says, he always usually points out as the general outcome of things as being a poor outcome, or any other conclusion than the mind to find a poor conclusion, without saying why it's a poor conclusion, and without saying why we should take it as a conclusion he wants us to take. This is something I want to say for myself. I want to say that It is poor practice to take what the common sense sees as important or sophisticated and place words like failure next to it without justification or elaboration. This is what I was saying. Is like he just says failure to stuff and uses it as justification. And he takes very sophisticated, somewhat more complicated ideas. One of the reasons why I'm pissed off by this is this book I kind of liked when I was 14. Because I had no fucking idea what I was reading. Now that I can kind of stand on my own two legs, at least from my own perspective and the way I'm taking this book, it just feels like some guy using some using his fucking, what does it say, his PhD. How does it actually say PhD anyway? I remember calling it saying somewhere that he had a PhD in behavioral science. Just using his using this Penguin published book as justification of what he says. Many things Nix talks about are parts of to continue this. Many things Nix talks about are parts of and are concerned with many things. So we talk about the AI, we talk about illusions, we talk about with this anime example, they're all concerned with many aspects, many things. And the nature of the mind being one of them. So when they no longer fancy or going through a deadly drought of at least popularity in a certain perspective, it is not inherently because the mind is flat. And this is very quite clear thing with this AI research when it comes in the future. It's less a hypothetical for Anna, seemingly at first asked for the sake of rigor. If Anna had attempted to commit suicide, but was at the moment of the action prevented/saved by a standby who was an undercover reporter following her, who then immediately asked her, "Now, Miss Corona, tell me a little about why you decided to launch yourself into oblivion." I kid you not, he completely passes over any sort of possible explanation to what Anna could have given to and had stated to the person. He says that this strategy seems unlikely to succeed, to put it mildly. He's referring to the question he proposed to be asked by his theoretical reporter in his made-up scenario. And you can say, oh, he's... Like, he didn't change the trail of thought. Don't publish a book where the arguments that could even begin to point you towards the right direction are poorly explained or poorly designed. I do not know how to put how bad this seems to me. Nick has begun with an idea that Anna, or anyone for the matter, cannot explain their cause / why or for actions. And this last case / hypothetical, the case that is closest to thought and their direct outcomes, he throws it out the window with critiques of a socially poor tasted question that he created for an imaginary standby. You would think by now that Nick would try to recover all he had said and laid out so that the correlation, causation, properties, precursors, whatever, help somehow to align with this idea that mind is flat. There's no mental depth in the improvising mind. But no, he proposes that he has stated adequately enough information for two opposing conclusions that one might draw from the vignette. This was a quotation. The first, quote unquote, that our mind have dark and unfathomable hidden depths. You can see here when I say he uses poorly taste, of course, somewhat over dramatized language to just degrade an argument. And the second conclusion, the quote, opposite view, ... The very idea that our mind contains hidden depths is utterly wrong, end quote. I.e., the mind is flat, yes. I don't think I need to say much to actually point out why this is poor. If you read the first 7 pages, you'll get why I dislike introduction already. Outside of that, Throughout the introduction, we'll cover not pre-existing any worlds. He talks about how Tolstoy had there's no pre-existing world to characters. That Tolstoy invents up his character as it writes. He's not discovering them, and he uses journalists to report like pre-expectations he might think other people have. We may attribute to them attitudes and beliefs beyond the printed pages. Yet such part apparent that is, of course, in the eye of the beholder. From that surface. Oh yeah, he also states this quote, which is a very interesting quote. No one at any point of human history has ever been guided by inner beliefs or desires. Any more than any human being has been imposed by evil spirits or watched over by guardian angels. Beliefs, motives, and other imagined inhabitants of our inner world are entirely a figment of our imagination. Explanations of ourselves and each other as guided by beliefs, desires, hopes, and fears may be wrong in detail. But they are right in spirit. Oh yeah, this is one of the things for it. He also comes to this point where he talks about if you were to ask him why he did something, why Anna had committed anything, we can come up with conclusions as quick as the flash. He says, I will generate an answer as quick as a flash. And he says we clearly have the ability to fabricate justifications at will, but these justifications cannot, of course, be conjurers about Anna's mental life because Anna being affected. Fuck me. Again, he does it he'll talk about what if Anna could instantly answer, how come Anna can instantly answer how she feels about something. Well, of course she can't, or there's nothing to explain because she's a fictional character. Well, don't fucking give that explanation then. Then he goes into this one good part where, not good part, but he talks about what he's planning to do in this book. In this book, begin quote, I want to convince you that the mind is flat, that the very idea of mental depth is an illusion. The mind is instead a consummate improviser, inventing actions and beliefs and desires to explain those actions with wonderful fluidity. But these momentary inventions are flimsy, fragmented, and self-contradictory. They are like a film set, seeming solid when viewed through a camera, but constructed from cardboard. Regardless of the quote analogy, which isn't necessarily much to point out, you get what I mean when I'm saying that all he does is fucking beat on things by using words like flimsy, fragmented, and self-contradictory. Prove that. Give examples. You're not giving examples by saying it is. Most things seem quite relatively coherent when you do. However,